Hi, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to paint this 15-minute landscape and we're going to use only our primary colors. So let's get started. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my yellow and you don't need a lot of the blue. It's going to go a long way. So I'm just going to add a little at a time. You can see it's already taking over, and this is super watery mixture. So I'm going to need a little more yellow. I do mix up a bit of a muddy green, but again, for nature, I kind of like that. Okay, I think this is going to be good. It doesn't have to be exact. You can kind of noodle with it as much as you want. Whoa. Okay. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and get that. And if you don't have enough water on your paper, it looks like I am getting a few hard lines. You can always use a little spray bottle and that'll help it along, just so that we get those nice soft edges. And I'm just adding it kind of in the whole area that I want to be in this grassy area, and we'll go back in and add the red later. If I add too much of the red now, it's just going to turn super muddy. And you don't have to be too concerned with, is this the right green for now? We're really just doing an underpainting. And it'll bring that nice warm tone. Can concentrate without trying to do any details. Just go, I know I have kind of a darker area over here, and same with kind of where it meets up with that road horizon. And you're welcome to do a sketch. I'm just, again, I'm not trying to be exactly like my reference photo, so I'm not too worried if it's not exactly right. And this is going to dry fairly light, so again, you don't have to be exact, especially if we go over this area with more of a gray color. So again, the blue goes a long way. And of course, we'll get a purple here. Then I like to do two at a time instead of adding all. That way I just know, okay, I'm starting with the purple. And then what I was trying to say earlier is you do the opposite to neutralize it. So that is going to be yellow mixed in with the purple, which will give us a nice gray. And you just kind of have to keep adding. You can see it was starting to look orange. Now we're getting into that neutral territory. And I always keep a bunch of old paintings that I didn't like, and I use the back of them. So for whatever demonstration this was, then I have paper, and then what I can do is go, where am I? Whoa, very brown, which actually we might use some of that brown. So I might keep some of that. But in order to make it a little more to the grayish side, I'm going to add a little more blue to it. And you can see how right away that got us into that gray territory. And it's quite diluted in light, so you just might have to add a little bit more. You can see I wanted to keep those, so I'm just remixing it kind of off to the side. And then I can get a darker, and again, that's a little brown, so we're just going to add more of the blue, and then, whoa, blue takes over as always. That's very blue. So we just want to add a little more of each of these. And, you know, it does take a little more time. But it is pretty fulfilling, and you do get exactly the colors you want if you're patient. Okay, so that looks like a good mix for the road. So I'm happy with those. So I'm going to start with this lighter mixture, and I'm just going to get the general area. It kind of sweeps over here. Okay, and while I have this brown, let's go ahead and get some nice blends in here. As I'm looking at the reference photo, I also see a little bit of that brown kind of mixed in with the grass. So I'm going to need a darker green that's more bluish. So I'm just going to take this yellowy green that we created and mix in more of our blue. And that's going to give us a very nice green for this background. And when you have a color that's cooler, it's going to tend to recede. You want the cooler colors to move back, and the warmer colors will naturally move forward. So you can manipulate as you're mixing and make your color cooler for that atmospheric shift. This was looking a little warm still once it hit the paper. So I just wanted to go a little bit bluish, which I definitely did there. So let's grab some of that and mix it in. And you can just go right over the other color that's under, and that'll bring a little warmth in with it as well. And again, as I move forward, I want that warmer green to work to our advantage. And we're still at this, what they call the ugly phase, where we're just adding the underpainting. I'm not trying to draw the grasses. We don't want to try to draw every blade of grass. But here we're just trying to get some nice transitions. No hard lines, you know. I feel like that's my middle name. No hard lines. And if it keeps you looser, you know, feel free to do some splattering, especially if you get some of the waters, you'll get some of those nice blooms that I think add a lot to a landscape. So that'll just give us a nice mottled effect. And you can choose which color do you want to drop in, where, and you just get that beautiful watercolor. It's quite dense over in this area, so I might use some of that darker, the blackish color, and go in kind of heavy. All right, now using my darker that we've already mixed up, let's go ahead and try to pick up some of that color shift that the reference photo had. That'll give our road a little bit of dimension. Wasn't loving those dark, or not dark, hard lines. I'm going to go, I can lift off the spots later. I'll show you how we can do that with the stencil. Okay, while it's drying, I do need some darker darks because I need to get darker in here to really give that impression that we're going back. So let's go ahead, mix up some more of the gold gray. I guess it was more. Sometimes it's hard, even though my palette is white, to see what's happening, and that's where I like this paper. I think that'll be okay. All right, so this is just trying to add a little bit of that dark. We can get it to sort of mingle in. As you can see, I'm still quite wet. And these are trees back here, so I think a little of this speckliness looks good. Red, and what I meant to do earlier before I got on the black mixing was mix up a little orange, because I see it is hard to keep your paints separate. Sometimes you can do this little technique where you keep half of a color over here, and then you get that transition. Meaning this can be more red and yellow, and then in the middle, I can kind of get every bit of the spectrum. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, still a round brush, but I'm going to go down to a number 6. And I'm going to go in with the oranges and just hit the little flowers. And then while they're still wet, I can pick up some red and do our favorite little blending technique. And in fact, I believe they're poppies, and they have a little bit of that black center, so you could even do that. But don't try to draw every flower exactly right. We're just giving the impression that there is a floral field down here. It's more of like symbolically representing. If that makes any sense. You'll get more spread. And you can do some that are just the red. You do have that nice warm underpainting, so it's going to bring a little bit of that orange because it'll mix on the paper. And quite a bit of spread here, so I'm just going to make this a little more contained. I feel like I say this on every video, but again, I'm not trying to be exactly like the reference photo. It's really just inspiring me. Also, remember when you're doing a landscape, you have scale. So as things move farther away, they're going to be smaller. And then what we can do is have, let's do some poppies that are like larger size up here. And maybe there's a little more detailing here. Where's our focal point? If we want it to be here and then it moves away, and this can all be more diffused. So I have, as you can see, a heavier pigment, using more of the red concentrate in areas to get that variation. So back to the photo as inspiration, you can make whatever composition you want that feels appealing to you. So I like that the flowers are kind of following along the roadside, and it does that in the photo, but you can exaggerate that to your liking. And of course, we always depend on the user, the viewer, to fill in with their own eyes the details. So these don't have to look like poppies. The fact that there's red in a field um, indicates that it's a flower. Also, just note that you can see the advantage of when you mix having a blend here, because I can just go in and pick whatever area I want from that little mix. So I'm noting that with poppies, you get those little pods or bloom buds, and so I'm adding just a couple of those with the darker. And there's a lot going on in the area down here. So I think I'm going to use some of the green that we mixed up and get a little bit of a blend with this darker color. And I'm just going to do some splattering here while I'm wet for a little bit of texture. You could do some back here too, just to kind of keep your composition interesting. There's also some poppies in this area back here. So I'm just going to put kind of a, we definitely wouldn't see as many details as we would in here. And even though I've painted these diffused, more reason that I'm just going to be very vague back here and just say this is just a burst of color. And that's going to let the viewer again understand what's going on. So using a bit of our mixes of our greens, let's just reinforce that this is the ground. Okay, that's better. I complain about it not drying and then I add more water, but that is how you manipulate the paint. We can bully those pigments around a little bit. Use a variety of our greens from the darkest dark to the lighter ones, and you just want to be, you don't have to get all of them, but especially around the edges we want to pick up a few. And I'm not really concerned with whatever that sign is in my reference photo, so I'm just going to ignore it. We're the artists, we can do what we want. I'll go in here if it's not too wet and try to get some of those stems. It's really effective if you have areas like this that are light. You can go in and add your stems there. I don't know if that made sense, but it's just a visual interest because you get a nice contrast. And it kind of gives us a reason of why did we put that underpainting there? Oh, because we don't have to paint every detail. We just have to suggest. And of course, they're grasses, so they don't have to be perfect. Just intermingling some of that brown in with that green so that I get a nice variation on my colors. And just kind of go every which way. Once you get enough of the super fine ones, you can switch brush sizes and again get a variety. You can see they're a little thicker here, so I can just kind of use the side of the brush a little bit. Because again, this area is closer to us, so. I do feel like we're getting a nice texture in here. Add darker, keep adjusting it so that we get a lot of variety. Be very loose. Don't forget, same with the flowers, larger in front, smaller in the back. Same with the grasses, you'll get larger, thicker grasses in the front, and then as you move back, they get more diffused and perhaps lighter. So I'm just making sure we get some of those nice larger grasses up in the front. I want some blacker blacks in here, so let's try to get not so wet of a mixture. This is where I'm spoiled having the convenience colors because I can just go in with the most pigmented color. It feels very purple to me, so how do we neutralize that? Remember, we use our friend the color wheel and we go yellow is opposite of purple. So if I add some of my yellow, it should shift toward the black. And if it starts looking too green, then you think you need a little more red for that perfect balance of primaries. That's actually a pretty good looking black. See which we like better. They're both pretty good. Even though this is brown, when I get it on here, it's going to read as black. So, all right, so we've got some variation in that. So let's try to just identify a couple of spots for those buds. This is also giving us a nice value shift, where if everything's looking too medium toned, just wanted a little more variety in there. Those were looking super pigmented. And you could say, where do you need some more interest now that it's dried? And you can add some delicate little strokes in the red. Don't really need any back here, just giving it a little texture. This is feeling a little light, but I don't want to go in and mess with it too much, but I'm going to see if I can just pull off a little bit. Just a little glazy layer of things, and you can, sort of blend it together. I like that a little better. Want a little bit of a darker line, identifying kind of our horizon. That'll take our viewer into the road. And then our favorite little blendy trick to avoid, just welcome that dark color up into the landscape. Just want to define that road a little better than I have. So that it helps the viewer know where we want them to head, and we want their eyes to go down the road. What's going on back there? So just trying to emphasize that horizon. And then you can always connect it with the background here. Trying to keep a obvious line. Okay, got some nice blends happening. All right, we do have a tree here that we kind of lost. So now that it's drier, because I don't have a lot of detail in the back, I don't want to all of a sudden have a very detailed tree. So I'm just being mindful of that. So I just want it to sort of diffuse. I think that's nice. It suggests there's a tree back here without adding a whole lot of detail. And because the texture is slightly different than what's around it, you know there's, oh, something else is going on there. Okay, so what you do with the stencils is you can take a toothbrush or any kind of scrubby brush, and just having your toothbrush wet with water, and you also want something to dab up the liquid. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to use my toothbrush, which is not super delicate. And of course I got 2 marks, so let's take one of those away. So as soon as you see it's lifted, you take it off and you blot. That was a better example. And then, of course, as we go back, it gets smaller. I'm not going to do too much of that. I just wanted to show you that technique. If you have, a more appropriate stencil that works, you can apply it. But that's a good way to show that, hey, we have a road here. And you can always go just kind of right up to it. And that just gives our road some direction. Because as we tell that story to the viewer, we want them to know, hey, travel down this road. See the beautiful poppies on your way. Okay, I feel like we did a pretty good job here. We have some interest in the landscape. We did it all with primary colors, using our color wheel for guidance to know how to neutralize a color. I did not use my favorite tape, so let's see how we do it. Yeah, it tends to leave glue behind. And it also likes to rip the paper. It's always safer if you wait until everything's completely dry. Tried not to put it on super tight. All right, but not too bad. Thanks for joining me today. If you like this video, please consider giving me a like, and I will see you at our next painting. Have a great day.